Correct. Hey, we've just gone live in the middle of trying to figure out technical things. Um, Hello, everybody. This is our live kickoff with my special guest expert, my good friend, at least, and fellow comic book fan, Matt Wednesday Serial.
Hello, Internet.
So we are here to kick off this project where 12 other members of the community. Oh shoot! Sorry. In the middle of trying to figure out.
Talking over yourself?
Hello, everybody. I made an amateur mistake.
Restart.
No, we're still going. So, where was I? We quickly edit that out. 12 members of the community are going to be going issue by issue through Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely's All-Star Superman, possibly a classic of modern comics. I personally think so. And tomorrow will be the first issue, which will be covered by ReadEmSteven. Everyone will talk about it in their own way. And at the end, we'll try to have a hangout with as many people as we can, talking about the whole thing. And actually, after this kickoff, we're going to switch over to Matt's channel and do just a general Superman show. So we'll mention that again at the end. Do you agree, Matt, that this is a modern classic?
I agree that it's a modern classic. I don't think there's a question about that. If you talk about the greatest Superman stories ever told, this is #1 on pretty much any list you can find. So, yeah. I feel it's almost unquestionable.
So this is the Superman, and I think of it as, even if you don't think you like Superman, you should try this one. This is the one thing that most people who like superheroes will like, even if they don't like Superman or don't think they like Superman. Yes. How do you feel about that also?
I know it to be true. I have a friend who really doesn't even like superhero comics, but All-Star Superman is just such a brilliant work, like on its own as something of comics, distilling this American icon down to the bone and just making such a great story, in some ways kind of playing off of like Arthurian legend with some American stuff thrown in, if you want to look at it that way. It comes together, and it's just one of the best, and it's also undoubtedly some of Morrison's best work, and he has a hell of a list in his name.
Yeah, I'll agree there. I think of this as Morrison's top mainstream superhero work. It's hard to compare it with his work on his Vertigo type of work, and his other really out there work. But with his superhero work, I'd call it tops. And I think it's kind of solidified his reputation. I think without this, he'd be a little more marginal of a figure in comics.
Yeah. This is something that's so unlike most of what he's done that it really rounds him out as a creator.
Yeah. And it's collected in 12 issues, and I believe he has said that it was loosely based on the 12 Labors of Hercules.
Oh.
And a nice thing about it is each issue you really could read separately. They add up to an even bigger, more interesting story, but each one is also a standalone issue, which is a real art, I feel, to do that. People don't do that too much anymore. So I really appreciate that about it, and it adds to that Labor of Hercules kind of setup. I guess you hadn't seen that particular take on it.
No, but that's really cool. And it's definitely there. It's super present, and it's even in the text, basically. So
right.
It's not a far leap.
And I believe, well, shall we go back? They were originally going to do something like Superman Now or something like that with Mark Waid and Mark Millar and Grant Morrison all working on it.
Oh man.
And that's when they met this guy dressed up as Superman at a convention.
Oh yeah, and there's a clip online that you can go find that's part of this Grant Morrison documentary where basically they saw a guy outside of a con just sitting in a Superman costume like this, and the whole idea of them of that image is that it's Superman just kind of there naturally. It's not some super dynamic pose though. It's just him squatting down, but it's still so Superman. And that's what kind of grabbed him and kind of, I guess, got the gears churning on this idea
Right.
somehow.
Well, I think Morrison and Wade were there, and this guy
Yeah.
just seemed so relaxed and comfortable in his Superman outfit that they started interviewing him as if he were Superman, and he started answering their questions in character.
Right.
And that somehow set the ball rolling in Morrison's head.
What I don't understand about that, though, with that whole backstory, is how do you get Mark Waid off of a big Superman project?
Well, the whole project was canceled by DC. So it was going to be a reboot of yet another reboot of Superman, which is something we can talk about a lot, perhaps in a future date or a future video later tonight. But they canceled that reboot, and then later they wanted to do something like you were saying, kind of an alternate universe or I don't even know if Ultimate Universe is the right thing, but kind of an out-of-continuity series, which was supposedly Dan Didio's idea that was all going to be called All-Star this, All-Star that. And they only managed All-Star Superman and All-Star Batman before the thing kind of went away.
Right.
So he remembered those ideas that he'd been bouncing around with those other writers and that he'd gotten while talking to the cosplaying Superman. And somehow that lit a fire under him. What I find interesting about that, sorry, or you were about to say something, Matt?
I was just going to say something off that Ultimate versus All-Star thing. Is at that point the Ultimate Marvel Universe was still relatively young, but the sales numbers and the reception was super high. And it really boiled down to one simple fact, was how do we get people into comics and these characters and talk about it in a way that grabs everything that they're about, without having all the baggage of all that crazy continuity.
Right.
And that's all All-Star Superman was supposed to be. And when we're talking about it and you see everybody go through all the issues, I think you'll see it far surpassed that.
Right.
And in comparison to almost any other DC offshoot sort of thing like this, the Superman one went way above and everybody loved it, and the Batman one
way below.
I just think that's worth noting.
Even though Morrison started with talking with someone who felt like the real Superman to him, what he really did was a recapitulation of the entire myth of Superman from 1939 on till the present, and somehow magically distilled and alchemically mixed it all together into this kind of uber perfect Superman story. Or series of stories, or that's how I see it.
Oh, it definitely is. I mean, each chapter plays a small part to the greater whole, but each issue's its own story.
Right. And I have a feeling if you read deep enough into the oeuvre of Superman over the years, you'd probably find points of inspiration for each one of those issues in the past. I just got out of the library the other day, or today, where'd it go? Superman in the 50s. And the first one, the first story in here, is where Superman meets 3 Kryptonians who just happen to arrive on Earth. And it reminds me of that reign of, or no, what's it called? The Substitute Superman issue in the All-Star Superman. I think it might be like issue 9 or 10.
Right.
And so that was just by chance. I just happened to open it up and say, oh, that looks kind of like that other one. But then he takes it and pushes it in all kinds of interesting directions that I think other writers didn't ever manage to do.
Well, and what's super interesting, especially about that part, is in the introduction that Mark Waid wrote to the second volume.
Uh-huh. And
He
it looked
mentions that part specifically because one of apparently the biggest debates among Superman fans is the fact that so many Superman stories deal with some form of something from Krypton showing up.
mm-hmm.
They argue with it happening so much that it kind of degrades this idea of the last man of Krypton kind of Superman's
Yeah, I've
thing.
often felt that. Yeah.
But you know, he's saying here that the way that this tackles it head on shows that you can have all that culture and bring it back, but show that Superman is still this unique force, and whereas maybe he's not completely the last Kryptonian, he's still Superman. You know, he still stands out and totally is worth all of the celebration.
Yeah, I mean, he really, to me, All-Star Superman makes you love Superman, even though I feel funny saying that. But yeah, I just got stuck for words, but
Well, it's a Superman story done right. It's dealing with all these crazy problems and finding the right way to deal with them and making the most out of them, and kind of that elevation, that idea of hope in its grandest form. And the best Superman stories are supposed to elevate. They're supposed to make you feel good when you're done reading it. And I think that's part of the reason why the people who do get super hooked on Superman keep coming back to it, because as much as you can argue different things about a story, if when it's done right it makes you feel good after reading it, that's a hard thing to beat. That stops.
yeah. Well, and an interesting thing, I mean, you talk about the all-American aspect. It's by a Scotsman and an Irishman, I think.
Yeah.
And both of whom come from kind of a subversive background. I know Frank Quietly, or I've read somewhere Frank Quietly was originally a either Scottish or Irish underground cartoonist, and Grant Morrison has always been the kind of slightly subversive, psychedelic kind of writer, and also Frank Quietly comes at it with this European style that looks like deeply influenced by Mobius and other European artists, and yet somehow tweaks those styles into becoming a perfect Superman style, so that you want Superman to be done that way.
I do think, I mean, whereas Quietly's known for that, and that's definitely where his work stems from, I feel the All-Star books is among his cleanest work. A lot of what people complain about with him normally is that kind of oatmeal men sort of look.
Yeah.
And in these books, I mean, some of it's there. I mean, it's still him, but it feels a lot cleaner. A lot less of that is there, and it does feel more standard comic book than his normal work, but in all the best ways.
True. You're very right there. You're very right there. And he leaves it kind of open, a lot of stuff open for the colorist to work with and all of that.
And the color in this book is phenomenal.
Yeah. So I worry about everybody will have their own, maybe some people will hate this. I mean, when we did the Watchmen series, you were kind of the guy who was down on Watchmen, which totally threw me. I'll be interested to see if everybody doing this responds positively. You were mentioned you watched the animated movie just recently.
Right. To get ready for this, I wanted to rewatch that, and I never put them together. Like, I never watched it and read it within a similar time period to kind of get around what was different. And it was really interesting because as much as, you know, these 12 issues are a distillation, the animation cuts it way down, so kind of any of the frills, although nothing's really a frill in here. Maybe a moment or two, but it's so pared down that whereas it's still enjoyable and still I feel is an interesting encapsulation of the idea, it can't compare. It's not just the book's better. There's more here, and when you tie it all together, there's more to be got from the coming back and forth. And interestingly, any Bizarro-esque moments, which there are quite a few in this book. I mean, besides the issue that deals with Bizarro stuff specifically, also with the Jimmy Olsen issue, there's elements of that coming through as well. Any of that is completely taken out, and I kind of wonder if there's a reason for that, because I don't know, maybe they felt like that was going to ruin the tone or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, they keep those animated straight-to-video movies pretty short too, right? It's
Normally, yeah, but I mean, they're usually supposed to be an arc, and usually they tend to be more faithful, but usually they're only adapting like longer stories or whatnot, so maybe this one was just too large. I don't know. So.
Well, hopefully a lot of people out there will read or reread along. This is going to come out every other night, so if you have access to these issues, I own it digitally and I have hard copies too. I really enjoyed reading it digitally for anyone who likes doing that. The colors pop incredibly. The art is amazing on a glowing screen. So I think it would be a lot of fun to read along. I think I'm going to yet again reread it as people do it. And what I would keep in mind while reading it is thinking in terms of mythology, thinking of it in terms of science fiction, in terms of religious metaphor maybe, and then just in terms of, I feel like Grant Morrison is teaching us here how we should be doing Superman. Those are kind of my big overview things to look at while reading it.
Yeah. My only major disagreement with you there is, if you're a comic collector, you should pick these up. This is something that should be on your shelf.
I totally agree. And I plan to have the Absolute Edition someday. But there's some people out there maybe want to read it right now. I just want them to know they can grab the whole thing digitally fairly cheaply if they want to read along.
Fair enough.
Or run out to your comic book store tomorrow morning before ReadEmSteven puts up his first episode.
Get on. I know he's excited, so you might have to get early.
And anyone out there, I will, once we're done doing this live, I will put the links down below again that I put in my announcement video. Anyone who doesn't know Steven, he's a uber Superman fan. He's thought about it a lot. He loves a lot of Superman, so he'll have he's a great person to kick this off. And we got lots of other great people. A few who've said they're not that big Superman fans. And some others are really excited. I did have two people turn me down because they will not do Superman, who would have otherwise been great people. But anyway, yeah, I think I pretty much shot off everything I have thought about as an intro.
Well, as the link to these things and whatnot, of all the books that we've covered and whatnot, I'm usually more of the cynic, more of like there's some ups and downs and whatnot. This is totally an amazing story. I'm not even really a Superman fan at all. This is just something that if you're a fan of comics, and American comics in particular, you just need to read. I honestly feel like there's one issue that didn't completely blow me away, and that's it. So,
Well, maybe Matt will tell us which issue that is on the next video on his station. So if you want to find out, come over there. Wednesday Serial. Yeah, in fact, before I reread this a month or two ago, I had forgotten how good Grant Morrison is, because I sort of was getting cynical about him. Although I really liked the first issue of Multiversity. So we'll see how that goes. But this is an interesting time to relook at that because Multiversity is also trying to be a big summing up. He may be trying to get back to his glory of All-Star Superman, I wonder.
Maybe, but I will say this about All-Star Superman. One of the major complaints about Morrison's writing is that he's grabbing from all these different things, and that if you're not super versed in the character, you're just going to miss so much you might not even understand the story.
Right.
Multiversity is probably the height of that guilt and the strength of it, but All-Star Superman, unlike pretty much anything else he's written for the big two, is you will gain more if you know your Superman lore, but if you don't, you will learn it by reading. It's on the level. It's completely approachable. It's definitely standalone within its own 12 issues. So
that's the perfect statement. I mean, this can be your introduction to Superman. This would be the best first Superman to read.
I'd also
and
say
it could be your introduction to Grant Morrison. You do not have to know anything about Grant Morrison, unlike maybe some of his other work, to get what he's doing or anything like that.
If you have a friend trying to get into superhero comics at all, this would be one of the first things I'd throw at them.
Which is interesting, then, to be able to go back to that very first primal superhero and make that work. So we can talk more about that primal superhero, perhaps, in a few minutes on your channel. So everyone, look at the links below when I'm not at people watching live now, but everyone else, and make sure you're subbed to everybody. It's going to start tomorrow with Steven, and then the next one will be on Monday and every other day, which should give everyone time. And then we will find some way to do a big talk about it at the end, too. So, sorry, Matt, was there...
No, read them out.
Thanks so much, Matt, for joining me, for letting me drag you into this. I should have said at the beginning, Matt has been in every single community crossover so far. Matt is also one of the oldest guys on the comic book community. I think you're in your 6th year now, right?
5th or 6th, yeah.
And the first one of these things I know about was started by Ghost Critic, but Matt played his role in kind of kickstarting Ghost Critic into doing it. So, really glad you could join me.
Thanks for having me again.
Okay, we'll see you all on Matt's channel and in all the upcoming videos. Bye-bye.